not believe this when I tell you. I'm a cowgirl. I grew up in a communal space. I was surrounded by a community of aunties who cared deeply enough to know that in order for me to have a better life, I needed to go back to school. My aunties moved me from that community to the city. I had never lived in the city. It was mesmerizing. The lights, everything about the city, electricity. My journey in America started in 2001. It's a mysterious journey in the sense that I never dreamt of coming to America, actually. I knew America from a television. What was in my mind about America? New York City, all those tall buildings. So as miracles would happen, while I was on the radio, I made a connection of the people who would eventually bring me to come and study in the US. We landed in Vermont, and my first thought was, where are those buildings that I saw on TV? Nowhere to be found. I realized this is it. I am in America. It's okay. I'm in America. So I had that privilege of having a host family in Bill and Lita, who also brought me to this country. The journey of being here expanded my community. I landed in Shelburne, beautiful village of Shelburne. Coming from where I come from, you have to realize this, that Shelburne is more like a city. In a true sense, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful. However, there was this sense that I just couldn't get. People didn't interact the way I was used to seeing or doing things. People lived in their own beautiful houses. So I came in and I started doing the same thing. This bothered me a lot. And I would engage with my host family that when are we visiting our neighbors? And I would tell them, in my country, actually, we don't have to tell our neighbors we are coming. We just show up. And they thought it was a foreign concept. The first question would be, why do you want to visit your neighbors? What are we going to talk about? So I gave up on that idea. I realized it's not going to happen. The good thing was that there was a family dog in the house. So I started walking the dog, Devron. Every moment I had, whether it was 5 times a day, I would take Devron out. He did not mind. He never complained. Because on the way back, he got a treat. So he associated our walk with the treat. So one day I was in this walk where usually the streets are pretty quiet. People don't talk to each other. People literally just turn their heads and sort of smile, not really smile, sort of smile as a way of saying hello. I started talking to people. Like, hi, my name is Thato. And they'll just say, it went on for some time until one day, one brave lady stopped her car. She had a dog at the back. She got out of her car. She came up to me. Hi, my name is Janet Auman. You look African. I lived in Africa. I know how to cook African food. Would you like to come to my house tonight to have African food? Now, my host family had told me that I could talk to people, it's okay, but I was never really told whether I could visit. But it just felt right. I said, yes, I'll come to your house. So she gave me direction. I said, I've never been to that side of Shelburne. So she said, don't worry, it's not too far from here. Let me go drop my dog. I'm coming, and I will show you my house. That evening, I was at Janet's house, and we were eating what sort of looked like African food. Wasn't quite African food the way I would cook it. But I appreciated the gesture. We started talking. I got to know that she lived in Lesotho. She's lived in other countries that neighbored my country. In fact, her daughter's name was Thato. I started babysitting Thato. My world expanded. My world in Shelburne expanded. My community grew. How my community grew, Janet connected me to other neighbors that she knew needed babysitters, dog sitters, cat sitters, house sitters. I became all that to everybody. But the strangest thing was that I come from a country where we actually don't dog sit or cat sit or house sit. So I started doing this weird thing, yet this weird thing gave me a sense of purpose in Shelburne. I connected with the kids that I babysat. Now, these were beautiful souls that actually taught me English, believe it or not. I had very limited English then. The beauty of children, they correct you. I would say something wrong, and they would say, no, 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 that's not how you say it. This is how you say it. So we would sit with the kids. They would have activities. You know, they would be touching my hair. That's where the hair thing comes in. And asking me, why is your hair so cold? And I'll touch their hair. Why do you think your hair is so long and beautiful? And we would start engaging in this conversation about our differences. They would ask me, why do you look so dark brown? That's what they would call me. Innocent conversation, beautiful conversations. And we would start engaging about our differences. I would tell them that there's a whole world out there of people who look so different with beautiful hairstyles. And I started braiding them. We started playing with our hair. We started engaging in all these things that these kids were not used to. I started gathering all Shelburne kids because I would babysit for 2 or 3 families at a go, and families started to know each other. They were forced to know each other. They had no choice. I was bringing their children together. The kids started playing together. That's what building community looks like. One of the things that I started doing was to do volunteer work. Because I felt so isolated in some cases, as a student, I found opportunities of volunteering in organizations, student organizations, home-based organizations. I was all over the place. I was looking to belong. I was looking for a community. That's where genuine conversations happened. People asked real questions, and it taught me this one thing, that if you have an opportunity to sit down with someone, one-on-one or in small group setting, you really become real with each other. You get to see that we are curious. I want to know why you look different. People want to know why I look different, right? So that actually has been, that innocence has been taken away by how we interact in the community, racism and all that. If we put that aside, and I am not saying it doesn't happen, it happens, but if we were to think of humanity differently, we will realize that we have so much in common than our differences. I expanded my communities. I started volunteering at an organization that had so many people who looked like me. I'm going to play a video clip for you, and we'll move on from there. Where do you think that is? Beautiful Burlington, Vermont. That's where the video was captured. In fact, I did the video clip. I want to introduce you to my beautiful community of women who organized such events, women who have colored the tapestry of Vermont. This was not organized by me. This was organized by women in the community who are fierce leaders, women who are building around each other and supporting each other to be in their new home of Vermont. These are Vermonters. I want you to walk with me a little bit about the refugee journey. You wake up one morning, you do the regular thing, and then the very next minute, you don't have a home anymore. You are told to run for your safety. You are told that people are coming behind you. You are displaced, just like that. They get resettled in other countries. Typically, they don't have a say of where they are going to be resettled unless they have family members in those countries. And when they get to those countries, they have to adjust. They have to assimilate. They have to find a ways of living. Most of the community members I work with, English is not their first language. Generally, we speak 5, 10 different languages. We have to learn English, but we still have to survive in the process. People come here with an idea that they are going to work, and you have doctors coming in as refugees. You have nurses coming in as refugees, talent that enriches the state of Vermont. Talent that enriches the world. That also shows that, indeed, communities are what you make them. Building community requires intentionality. If you are intentional about knowing your neighbor, it can happen. If you are curious enough about who is your neighbor and can engage in respectful questions, respectful conversations, you will realize that you will learn a lot, because all our walks of life bring us so much wealth in terms of knowledge. Sharing that knowledge is what really breeds communities that thrive. Encounters, whether in small groups or in larger groups, they need to happen in order for us to build communities. Coming in as a refugee has its own challenges. Coming into a new community has its own challenges. Imagine you don't speak English. You have to understand the rules that govern the country. You have to understand the housing rules, and you've never had to rent in your life. You probably never had a house that electricity, you have to learn to pay bills suddenly. You have to learn to organize and manage all these things. That's where community comes in. That's where we have to know our neighbors, get to know what is it that I can help you with, because that one thing is going to make a difference, and you are going to have a good neighborhood. I want to tell you a story of one of the families that I get to serve. Some 5 years ago or so, I received a phone call in the middle of the night from the emergency room in Burlington, Vermont. Now, we have a very good relationship with the community of providers that we've built. They called because one of our community members had been brought to the emergency room, and they couldn't communicate, so they were looking for an interpreter. So we worked together. Eventually, I found them an interpreter, and the mother of the family ended up being hospitalized. This is a family of 9, mother, father, and the children. And the following morning, I drove to the hospital, and we sort of figured out the paperwork. We worked everything out. This was during school year or the semester. So then I went to the house, informed the husband what was happening, And he was a little frazzled because mom was taking care of everything, figuring out how the kids go to school and all that. So I said to him, we got this. We are going to work through this. I'm going to help you drop the kids, get the kids ready. We did all that, and things were good. But mom was in the hospital for 5 days. So after consultation with the doctors and everyone, mom was diagnosed with psychosis due to post-traumatic stress disorder. It became very challenging for the family. Some older kids in the family had to make really tough choices because mom now was constantly in and out of the hospital. Shortly after, the father experienced the same thing, was diagnosed with psychosis, ended up in the hospital. So I gathered some of the community members from from the country where they come from. We started cooking, rotating, cooking, taking kids to school, checking on the parents in the hospital, making sure that the home is running. Out of that, we also bred a program where we actually recruited grandmothers in the community to support the family. The beautiful thing about asking is that the moment we started asking, would you be able or willing to help this family? There are a little bit of struggle, kids needs to be dropped at school. So many people said, oh yes, just tell me what to do. So now these black kids suddenly have white grandparents that they never had, because when they had to flee the war, the family typically gets disgruntled. Now, these grandmothers are now the pillars of most families. If you don't believe it, just come to Burlington. I will show you the grandmothers and the grandfathers of our communities. They take in these children, they teach them to ski, things that we've never done. They teach them to swim, things that we've never done. They teach them to ride bikes. I mean, it's such a cool thing. But out of that, strong communities are built. Out of that, children and grandparents are interacting. We are building intentional community. I am convinced that in order for communities to thrive, there has to be intentionality, there has to be curiosity, there has to be compassion, and there has to be true love. That's how we build communities. That's how Vermont has started building communities. And that's how we are going to continue building strong communities. Thank you.